In a country where storytelling is survival, who gets to tell your story and when? This is not just about Netflix, it's about control, reputation, and the right to shape your own narrative. South Africa has a rich oral tradition, and the modern clash between digital media and personal privacy. This case is relevant. It involves a high profile figure whose actions shocked the nation and continue to do so. It tests the boundaries of media freedom in the age of streaming. It reflects how crime, celebrity, and justice intersect in the public eye. Unfortunately for Dr. Magudumane, the court ruled it's not urgent. Yeah, after fleeing South Africa. August 2025, Magudumane sends a cease and desist letter to Storyscope, the production company behind the Netflix documentary. September 11, 2025, the court hears the argument in the Pretoria High Court. September 12, 2025, 8:30 a.m., Judge Elmarie Potterill delivers her ruling just minutes before the scheduled release of the documentary titled Beauty and the Bester in the court of public opinion, and that they were denied the right to respond to the documentary's content. The court then had the following facts to consider. Magudumana had signed a commercial agreement with Storyscope, licensing her personal archives for use in the documentary too. This is a red flag. The second red flag is that she was paid for the material. The court also then considered the urgency was deemed self-created because they say, well, you knew. I mean, if you are going to be signing a licensing deal with them and you're going to be receiving payment, you are very well aware of what it is that these people are doing. She then, the other factor that the court needed to consider was much of the documentary's content was already public knowledge, drawn from journalism, court records, and social media. Bester's claim also claimed that the documentary would be biased and speculative. The outcome of this application, the Pretoria High Court struck the application of the rule with costs. The court ruled that the urgency was self-created. The documentary did not present a new or defamatory content, and the judges are not influenced by media, unlike in America. And I do think that if this was in American context, probably this ruling would have been different because you would remember that in the United States, they have a jury system. The jury is made up of men and women of the public, right? And so obviously they are susceptible, so as you and me, we are susceptible to whatever material that we are receiving publicly, that we are consuming, be it newspaper, be it magazines, be it social media platforms. But in this instance, the only people that really need to decide what's going on and that are going to be sitting and passing judgment in the upcoming trial of Dr. Magudumana and Thabo Bester are the judges themselves. So that's why the judge was like, well, judges are not influenced by media. They rely on evidence presented in court. So the fact that you think that you're going to be trialed and persecuted by a court of popular opinion is irrelevant in this particular circumstance because that is not applicable in the South African context. So that is the primary issue here, I think. The primary basis of her case was that she's going to be deemed guilty based on whatever is going to be presented in the documentary, and that whoever would be sitting to judge her case would then not be objective. That is not applicable in terms of the South African law because we all know we do not have juries. So all of that is irrelevant. Furthermore, she was well aware because she was also citing issues of, I wasn't really given an opportunity, she says. If you read through the judgment, she says that, or the application, she says that she was not given an opportunity to actually review the material. But the problem with that is she signed an agreement or a licensing agreement allowing Netflix to use her archives, meaning the photographs of herself that are available in the public domain from even her own social media accounts. Um, and she received payment from them. Although the court did not disclose how much money this is, I believe that it's a substantial amount of money, considering also that she had an attorney present there, and I mean, Dr. Magudumane is a smart girl, right? I believe that if she had had an attorney there, they probably struck some kind of deal also with regard to royalties. I'm kind of sure she probably went there. So she was well aware of what it is that was going on the whole time. And then the other considerations that the court had to take into account was the freedom of expression of the media. Freedom of expression in this particular instance outweighed the speculative harm. Prior consent and compensation had actually been given to her, like I previously explained. And the documentary was actually a collation of public domain material. It was nothing new. And it's true, right? Well, some of us didn't know about the part of um, Pearl Tusi, too. And then I also was not aware of the full facts of this matter actually until I watched the documentary. I didn't know of the two murders. I didn't know of all of the things, in fact, that hadn't transpired. And I believe that finally, a lot of people who didn't understand what it is exactly that this lady had done, we finally got to understand the kind of allegiance that existed between her and Thabo Bester. However, I will say this. The Netflix documentary is presenting her as a person who may have Stockholm syndrome. And that could also be part of her defense. And maybe that is why the attorneys were bringing in the application. Because when I looked at it and I was like, the way it's angled is presenting her as a battered woman. Um, and when battered women or Stockholm syndrome victims fall in love with their victimizers or their abusers. And that could be a defense. And maybe this is what they were intending on raising as a defense in her court case. And I think maybe that's why the attorneys were opposed to it, because maybe that's what they were trying to raise as a defense in this particular instance for her. I would have done that. That's what I would have done in any event. um, when we look at, does this judgment actually impact on the community morale or standards? The impact of this particular case, from my perspective, is that it reinforces the principles that media freedom is essential in a democratic society. Um, it challenges the notion that public figures can control the narrative. It also signals to the community that truth telling and transparency are not optional. And then I think it also has maybe cultural relevance, because this is a case that involves two of South Africa's most notorious figures, dubbed the modern day Bonnie and Clyde. It tests the limits of media accountability, and it also positions it against individual rights. It reflects how celebrities, crime, and justice collide in the digital age. I think this case, in fact, should never have been brought to court. It's very interesting. We live in very interesting times. I think this is a case that I need to pay attention to. I haven't been paying attention to this particular case, but it actually just got interesting for me because I wonder what the charges are exactly against Dr. Magudumane. I think maybe in the next episode I'll cover something like that where we look exactly at her charges. What is it exactly that she's facing? Because I'll be very honest, I'm not a person who's into social media and all of these things. So I look at all of these things on face value. And I looked at this case and I thought, oh, this girl probably fell for the lies of this guy. But there's more to it than that, right? Because she allegedly registered companies and had people depositing money into an account that was being controlled by Mr. Bester while Mr. Bester was still behind bars. She was part and parcel of orchestrating a birthday party and employees being hired. She was definitely involved. Because the company was registered in her name. That's why I'm saying she's involved, because this company is in her name. Um, where they had employees involved. She was telling people that he is TK Nkwani when she knew very well that this is not TK Nkwani. So she I want to say Awela Popo, because I believed all this time when I was looking at her, I'm like, this girl, this guy, but nah, I'm starting to believe that there's more to it than this. And I think her defense was going to paint the picture of Stockholm syndrome victim. But a lot of people are not buying it. A lot of people are like, no, man, why would a girl drive from Sandton to Mangaung prison? Why would a girl with all of that access to all of the things that she had access to? What was happening? It would be interesting to hear what her motivation is. Um, but yeah, I think in a nutshell, we've just covered the case with regard to why the case was dismissed with costs, rightfully so. This case should never have been brought to light. She shouldn't have said anything. She should have just kept quiet. I mean, she got paid for it. You sat, and she didn't only attend this meeting by herself. Her attorneys were present, so she's fully aware of what it is that was going on. And I believe that the court actually struck it off with costs because not only was she wasting the court's time, I believe that there were time constraints that were involved. Like the court indicated that there were certain documents that needed to have been filed by 12 o'clock midnight the previous day, and her attorneys waited until 2 hours before the court hearing. So, on top of that, the court felt disrespected by the conduct of the attorney as well, and that's why they were not lenient. However, I still am of very much of the opinion that this case should not even have come to court, purely because she sat in a meeting with these guys 4 weeks before. She knew exactly what was happening, and she received the money, and she negotiated, and I'm sure she's got some kind of an ongoing royalty agreement with them, you know, because this thing is going to remain on Netflix for a while and it's going to generate a lot of money. But yeah, that's my take on Dr. Magudumane versus Netflix. Thanks for tuning in.